Thank you very much, Lola, for coming on the Channel's Book Club.
Thank you for having me.
You've done incredibly well with your writing career now. At what point did you discover you could write?
I can't say there was a particular age because I've always written. From when I was 6 years old, the minute I knew how to write, I was writing. But I think this is largely because I was reading a lot. At the schools that I went to, I was encouraged to read. So by the age of 10, I was a voracious reader. And I think anyone who reads a lot feels an impulse. There's just this thing within you that makes you believe that if you put pen to paper, you'll be able to produce something interesting. And I did do that. I started several novels when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. I still have some of them. And it was just part of my life, writing poems, writing stories, creating characters in my head. So I can't say there was a particular point. I didn't set out to become an author. It was just something that I did.
So when did you discover you could write commercially or professionally, if I may put it that way?
When I was at university, I remember we were doing creative fiction in year 3, and I wrote a few poems, and I remember my lecturer saying to me, you know, these poems are really very good. And I was chuffed and I was happy. But then again, even then I didn't think I would ever get to the point where I would have put together a collection of poems. It was just something that was part of my life. I guess just before I left university, I started hanging out with a group of authors, especially members of the Association of Nigerian Authors. And that's when I realized you kind of make that connection between the book and the author. And that's why it's a great thing to expose children to authors, because often the author is just an abstract entity. You've got the book, but you don't think, you don't quite realize that there's somebody, a real person, behind all those words.
What is the story behind the publishing of the book? I mean, every book has a story behind it.
It's actually based on a true story. When I was about 14 years old, my brother had this girlfriend called Anne, who was a medical student. I think she was doing her house job or something at the UCH. I grew up in Ibadan. And she used to come to our house pretty frequently. And every time she did, she would tell us about amazing things that had happened at the hospital. You know, the different things about, you know, some of the cases. Of course, never mentioning names, but just saying, oh, this happened and that happened. And one day she came round and she said, oh my goodness, I haven't seen you guys for about 2 weeks. First, let me tell you what happened 2 weeks ago, and then let me tell you what happened yesterday, because they're connected. So I was all ears. And she told us that 2 weeks prior to that time, a man, it was an Igbo spare parts dealer, had dragged in this graduate wife that he had just married. The girl actually went to the University of Ibadan, the new wife, and was his third wife, and he dragged her into the hospital saying, find the solution. What's the problem with this girl? She can't give me children. I have children from all my other wives. What rubbish is this? And then the hospital, they embarked on their own investigation, and of course what they found out was devastating to everyone in the family. And as soon as she told me that story, I just thought, wow, I can just see this story as a play. I think I was studying The Lion and the Jewel then, so I'd just been reading about Baroka, Professor Lola Shoneyin's book, and I detested the man. The fact that this man could have everything that he wanted, any woman, and somehow I just kind of made that connection with this male character, and I thought it would be good to bounce him off Baroka, and that's how this story came about. So it's based on a true story, something that happened in Ibadan.
Okay, so how will you then respond to those who point you to educated women in polygamy and women who say they are happy in polygamy?
Well, I would say that where the husband has a lot of money and he's been able to set these women up independently, where they don't have to face the normal complexities of living under the same roof, I think it's easy for the women to be able to convince themselves and others that they're truly happy. But I remember in Abuja, when I was living there 2 years ago, I spoke to a woman, and she said to me, she said, you know what, I'm a Muslim woman from a very good home, and I'm very educated. And when I married my husband, I was certain that because we were both relatively, enlightened and exposed, these are her words, I was so convinced that he wouldn't take another wife. The truth is, there isn't one woman who goes into marriage believing that she will not be enough for her husband. It's about I'm taking a man, he's marrying me, I'm marrying him. We're going to make each other happy. We are enough. You're enough for me, I'm enough for you. The minute a man takes another wife, what he's saying to his first wife is that she's inadequate. It's almost like saying there's something wrong with you, you're not enough for me, you can't satisfy me, and this immediately would destroy, anyone's sense of security, anyone's sense of self. So you also have these new wives coming into these homes. Any woman going into an established marriage knows that she's not going in for an easy ride. You know it. You know you have a lot you have to contend with. No matter how strong you think you are, don't forget that there's a relationship already established with the man, with his wife, with their families, with their friends. And suddenly you're coming in. You're coming in strong as well. You're ready for a fight. In fact, you will take the fight to that first wife if she doesn't bring it to you. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, unfortunately, what that does, especially in a situation where the first wife also feels she has to protect and defend whatever it was that she had before the new wife arrived, what you find is that these women then have to change their personalities. So maybe a woman who was, generally happy-go-lucky, looking after her husband, enjoying her children, has to become a bit of a cat. You're having to defend your space. And that changes your personality. Why should any woman have to experience that? I wonder if, polyandry, it's something that you hear of in a lot of different societies. I wonder how men would feel if it was possible for their women to have other spouses.